when a client doesn't attend your session, oh, it can be so downheartening, Rory. It can be frustrating. And it can also be scary from a level of, did I do something wrong? Am I doing this right? Am I going to get my hours in? Can bring up a lot of emotions.
I've spent many an hour on a rainy January afternoon or evening where I used to have my student counselling practice, sat waiting for my client, and they never showed up. And I'd given an hour of my time away, and I'd think, will I ever hit this 100 hours? And then a few months after I'd had a DNA, I was reminded of something that has really stayed with me throughout my professional life. I noticed that the lead therapist was standing looking out the window, and I said, "You okay?" She said, "Yeah." My client hasn't turned up. And I said, "Oh, gosh." And she said, "I wonder what's happening in that person's life." And she was obviously in a kind of whimsical, thoughtful mood. And she said, "We don't know what goes on in other people's lives." Many years later, I came across something called extra-therapeutic factors. And those are things that are really out of control, things like financial situations. It could be a childcare issue that can't be resolved. It could be that you can't afford the bus fare to come to therapy, or there's other more pressing things than therapy. I think it's so easy to focus on ourselves, but sometimes I think looking at the wider aspects of the client's world can be a bit reassuring in those situations, because if you're working for an agency, the therapy is usually free, and that means it's usually the people who arguably need it the most are trying to access it, but they have other things going on in their lives. And I think that you feel quite downhearted. Supervision is always a good place to discuss it. And also your training circle at wherever you've been taught, because you won't be the only one who's had DNAs, even in professional practice, but it can have a bit of an impact on students' self-worth.
Yes, two sides to this coin. I'm going to start on the side that you were on there, Rory, with what it means to you as a student. Then I want to turn the coin over and say, what can you do with that time when it comes? Because you are going to have DNAs. DNA stands for do not attend. So I think we need to recognize that the clients coming into therapy is their therapy. They actually have a right to not come. Maybe they don't need it anymore. Maybe they don't want it anymore. Maybe it didn't feel like it was a fit for them and they didn't feel that they could say that when they came into the session. Maybe it's just like you said, Rory, something that's going on that day and there might be at the next session. So it can be frustrating. We can look at ourselves and say, what have I done? Is this me? Or we can just recognize that DNAs are part of being a counsellor, both in placement and in private practice. It's part of being in any service delivery. You're going to have DNAs. And what can you do about it? If you're a student, you're going to have assignments, you're going to have personal development things to write about, you're going to have journals, studies to do. What I would do when I was at placement and I had my fair share of DNAs was I took my work from my training and I would do revision, work on assignments, read books, because sometimes I would have more than one client. So I had the hour where I needed to stay because I had another client, so I couldn't go home. I would use that time to deepen my studies. So the time was always very useful for me. And if you do find stuff coming up for you, so you start going, oh, what have I done wrong? It's great to write about that, because you're going to have to put in a personal development piece of work as well to gain your qualification. And it's great to speak about how you maybe felt that you weren't doing a good enough job and how that was for you and how you took that to supervision and found your way and navigated through that. So there's some things that you can do with that time. And then I also wanted to add in that you may see less DNAs as you go forward into your professional career on graduation. And the reason I say that is very often placement practice is free at delivery. And sadly, there is a psychological phenomena that plays out that when you don't pay for something, you value it less. And I know that this is not just in counseling and psychotherapy. Go to your doctors and look around in the waiting room. You're going to see a little sign speaking about how many wasted hours from people not arriving to their appointments. So it really is something that is just part of this process, Rory.
It is. Certainly towards the end of my student time, they instigated a new policy. So anybody who wanted counselling would come in, get an assessment, and then they would be told the waiting time was 4 weeks. And then they'd be sent an appointment, which they had to confirm. And then they'd be contacted again to make the appointment. And a lot of therapists said, oh, it sounds like a lot of barriers towards therapy. But what actually happened was that by waiting 4 weeks, some people who thought they needed therapy actually resolved their issues. The crisis had passed. And it just left a cohort of people who really did need help. They were willing to wait, and that cut DNAs down. So sometimes the actual referral system can contribute to DNAs. But I'm with Ken. I think that if someone doesn't attend, then you've got a great time to, as in Ken's case, do some study or revision, or in a busy life, just an hour for yourself. You know, you can sit and read, have 1 hour of uninterrupted time. And for those people who have busy lives and children, I think that's a bit of a luxury, to be honest, Ken.
Yes. As we come to the end of this topic of when clients do not attend your sessions, I wanted to touch on one point that I think is really important. If it's maybe the first appointment with this client and they don't arrive, then we don't look at ourselves and go, what did I do wrong? But what can leave you with feelings is when you've seen a client and they come to that first session and they're engaged and telling you what's going on for them. And at the end of the session, they go, I'll see you next week. And then next week comes and they don't come. And they may not ever come back again. And it can leave us going, did I say something? Did I do something? But here's something that I want to leave you with as we go out of this. The actual process that takes place because of therapy doesn't always take place in our counseling room when we are there with the client. The process actually happens within the client, and it can happen after our session. That client may have got what they needed. They got an opportunity to say what was going on for them, have somebody listen to that and reflect that back, and that may be just what they needed. So when a client doesn't come back, maybe you've done a good job. Maybe they've got what they needed out of that. Maybe that's a nice positive way to look at it, Rory. And of course, the other side of this is the paperwork side of it. Let's say, for instance, you have 6 or 12 sessions that you're able to offer, and the person doesn't come back on that second session. There will be some process of checking that they still want their place to keep that open for them. And I'm looking back on my placement, and around about 1/3 of my client hours did not attend. I remember about halfway through my placement going, okay, I need to get another placement now to fill up my 100 hours. So I took on another placement about halfway through my placement to get those extra hours in.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. I've had clients where it's become very clear in that single session, they just wanted to be heard, they wanted to be witnessed and tell their story. And I think at the end we made an appointment, but we both knew underneath it all they weren't going to come back. So don't be too hard on yourself. And I hope this conversation between me and Ken has been a bit of relief for you. And I know it's a topic that's regularly discussed by very anxious students. Don't be too hard on yourself.